Here we were together in school. Here we were together in service, although in different states, but we did meet occasionally in Delhi. Uh, for and I, one of my friends remarked to me yesterday that it is that how has Mohanty written such a brilliant book? He's not even an economist because he was a student of English literature. But then Mr. Mohanty corrected me in the morning. He said no, he did go through a rigorous course of in economics, including a PhD. The book is fantastic. It's for any common man or woman or youngster to read and imbibe about what kind of issues face us in our country and what kind of choices do we want to make. Now, when you look at both the books combined, it brings to the common. It's difficult to choose between the two, so I choose who is older, who goes first. So, Pradeep, you first. Why usually like to- First, that was a very warm welcome. Let me greet everyone who is here, and I hope that the book that I'm going to speak about would be able to generate sufficient interest among you to understand as to where do we stand in terms of our judicial delivery system. This is, of course, terrible. The judicial delivery system itself is terrible. The kind of delays which exist in the country are phenomenal. Only today I was reading in the newspapers that the Supreme Court has sought the government of India's permission to allow re-engagement of retired judges to clear some backlog with certain parameters. Now, I don't see any reason as to why retired judges cannot be re-employed when retired IS officers are re-employed everywhere and everywhere possible. Uh, but that is not the issue. The issue is slightly different. Can I have my slides, please? And see, one commonality between mine and Mohammad's presentation is the issue of public institutions which exist in the country for governance. That is one very common trend which I think is very important for us to understand. Can I have the slides, please? Hello? Okay. Right. Now, as I said, one very important common factor between our two presentations is that both are public institutions. Now, public institutions in theory and in practice are required to serve the public and not serve themselves. On the contrary, whether you find sorry, yeah, fine. Do I have a remote or I ask him to? Okay, thank you. Uh, जब तक नहीं बोलूंगा आगे मत बढ़ाइएगा इसको. See, one of the important factors of either of these institutions is, if you look at the structure of a democracy, we have the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. So we have three different branches in the government in order to ensure that governance serves the larger public good. Now, whether it serves the larger public good or not is something which we still have to debate. And I'm sure Monty Saab's presentation itself will deal with much of the issues in the context of public goods as well as public welfare. Uh, Let me turn to a book per se. Next, please. Now, the motivation for the book was what? I mean, there was the issue about environment, economy, and equity concerns are increasingly getting intermixed and posing complicated questions for the judiciary. A very large number of judgments you might have come across. There is this complex interplay. It's not easy yet. The second motivation was that Supreme Court decisions have far-reaching consequences, and some of these case studies that I'm going to talk about we'll highlight the kind of consequences, either the good consequences or the bad consequences that it led to. The third is, of course, decisions did not take into account the socio-economic realities. That is an unfortunate aspect, and that is what I have criticized constructively in the book. Uh, Fortunately, no judge issued a contempt notice to me. For the fact is that, a lot of people do not know, but contempt can only be issued in the event that there is an unconstructive criticism and targeted at a particular judge. If you do criticize the system or the a particular order, you're not doing anything wrong. And as far as you use language which is polite. Having said that, the fourth is and this is something which came across easily from many commentators who have commented on the book. This is a very odd book that I had advanced comments from nearly 45 dignified people around the countryside, whether they were in the governance or civil service or judiciary. And as one reviewer in the Business Standard wrote, Pradeep has ensured a kind of an insurance policy by getting these adverse enforcements. That is not the fact. The fact is that I wanted to test the waters as to whether I'm right or wrong. Now, mind you, those comments are excellent, as you will find in the book if you pick up a copy. The final one was that we have reviewed 6 Supreme Court decisions. One of them actually began when the Niti Aayog commissioned my organization, which is Such International, to do a study on a very ridiculous order of the Supreme Court. I don't know if you remember, there was a ban on sale of liquor 500 meters from a highway. Absolutely unenforceable order. And that caused a lot of mayhem in the sense there were a lot of economic losses. Because they felt that because drunken driving is leading to more road accidents than any other factor. Like you could be. They didn't even look at the fact that there are other intoxicants also. And there was already a Supreme Court committee which still exists today on road safety, which had recommended something on it, which was not even mentioned in the order. A kind of, this discord between the Supreme Court and its own body which existed, which dealt with this side of thing. I'll more about it later. So the only one judgment which came out with shining colors was that of a Justice A.K. Sikri, who invoked the doctrine of the economics of a particular matter. So how does it? Can you pass an order just on the black and white of the law? You can't. Our constitution also allows you to look at the holistic impact of any particular issue before you pass an order. It's called Article 142, bracket 1. So that is what Justice Sikri used, and he quoted liberally about the fact is that you have to look at the whole. My own judgment, and this is what Justice Sikri did not need to write in that particular order, it was a case of a sugar mill, purchase and so on. A very, very silly bureaucratic mail, some sugar mill. There was an order passed by the government of India that there should be no 2 sugar mills within 20 kilometers from each other or 15 kilometers. Some states had different norms, etc., etc. That, in my opinion, was anyway very anti-competitive. It didn't make sense to me. What kind of sugar cane producer they were producing? Well, that is again another story. The fact is that matter was so confused, and there were all kinds of public interest litigation which was filed by vested interests. Usually, a lot of PIs are filed by vested interests. Anyway, next please. The 6 cases I spoke was the first one that provoked the writing of this book was this ban on liquor within 500 meters on a highway. The second was the public health and emission standards, the ban on non-BS4 vehicles. This is another very ridiculous order, which I'll explain later. Cancelling coal block allocations. It's like cutting off a head to cure the headache. So instead of applying any remedial measures, this is to cancel all the coal licenses the way it happened in the next one as well, the 2G case, the 2G license case. And there was corruption in that, there was no doubt about that. You had the DMK minister who was in charge of telephone, and he used to tell his staff that I'm the prime minister for the telecommunications of the country. So literally saying, screw the prime minister. In spite of the fact that then Prime Minister Manmohan Singh even sent a file saying that, look, you have to go through the auction route. What he did was to go through first come, first served, which was basically, uh, pandering to rent seekers. There are companies who made crores of rupees by selling off their company which got the license, for example. The point is that it could have been resolved. We also had, in this particular case, we had an international relations issue as well. And I'll tell you why. So why I'm saying this is that all these factors should have been considered by the court. And unfortunately, the judge happens to be my nephew. And I argued with him about it also. I said, look, 4 countries. Norway, they had invested in Telenor, which is a government company, which had license in India. Eutelsat from UAE, then the Russian company, and there was one more company, I forget. So there were 4 foreign countries also involved in this, which all got pissed off. The larger issue, which is what we have been working upon, is how do you dampen the investment climate by these kind of orders? Now, this is what Justice Sikri defined in his judgment. The Shiv Shakti sugar case, which is what I'm going to come to at the end. Now, another case which seems to find no end, no conclusion at all. There's another case of typically bureaucratic revenge. Adjusted gross revenue case. Still going on, if you read in the newspapers, etc. This was very interesting. If you remember, during the time when Vajpayee was the prime minister, and who was that Maharashtra politician who died? Pramod Mahajan was the telecom minister, and they decided to auction licenses for operation of these wireless telecom system in the country. Now, everybody ended up by committing a very high amount. And when they started actually operating, I don't know whether any of you remember, see, the answer may not know, but in the beginning, when the mobile telephones system came in, even for receiving calls, we had to pay. Yeah, something like that. That's so ridiculous. For the simple reason they had to recover the money. So finally, they went to in appeal to the Prime Minister through Pramod Mahajan. Well, look, we have to change the system from absolute fees to revenue sharing basis. And it was a very wise decision on the part of the government that before the telephone sector could sink and you would not have enjoyed the facility of mobile phones, including the nuisance that it brings, that they changed the whole system and they converted that whole license system into a revenue sharing system. Now, here's where the catch is. The way the revenue sharing was defined was understood to be, and there was a little gray area left in that, change of license condition. That how will the revenue be determined? On the basis of gross operating revenue. Operating revenue. Mind you, let me underline the word operating.
I'm so sorry for the disturbance. We have Mamta Jain's vehicle right in the way. She's here. Please kindly remove the vehicle. Thank you.
If I was you, I would allow the vehicle to be towed away. If you do a wrong thing, then you deserve punishment for that. Having said that, let me come back to that. Where did I? You broke my chain of thoughts. What was I talking about? Yeah, AGR. So now operating revenue. I said let's underline the word operating. Now, what they did was that DOT at that point of time was to look at the whole revenue, the sale of scrap, sale of licenses, sale of insurance policy, whatever else could be byproduct, but not telecom operating revenue. And that then led to a dispute because it was the telecom operator were given to understand by the telecom officer that look, we'll sort it out and we'll involve TRAI in it, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India. But then it's a long case. The fact is that the matter is still pending, and even in this, the Supreme Court, when the Government of India later on, when the matter went to the Supreme Court, it is still hanging in the Supreme Court. Government of India agreed to be a little liberal, and the Supreme Court slapped the wrist of the government also. Said, how can you be liberal when we've already passed an order? Egos. So a lot of these orders have resulted from human egos and not rational or even dispassionate analysis. And I'll come to that later on. Next, please. Now, there were three broad parameters that we looked at in this analysis. One is the legitimacy, like, did the court go beyond its remit? The AGR case, which I just spoke about, court actually went beyond its remit. If the government is happy for, but it was saying willing to rectify that mistake which has happened, and it is very dirty case. I can't get into the detail of that. Secondly, if you look at, did the court use its decision to substitute for a policy decision, which is not its remit? On many occasions, courts have rightly held that policy, if it's a matter of policy, then let the government decide. Courts cannot decide that. So that was one parameter, in terms of legitimacy. The second was suitability, which is what I spoke about. In the case of non-BS4 vehicles, which is again a recent thing happening in Delhi as well, if you took a BS4 vehicle, it could be impounded because of pollution. Whatever they want BS5, BS6, and so on and so forth. So what they did was, this is a very funny case. They gave just 15 days for all the stocks to be cleared. So all the automobile sector, manufacturers, dealers, etc., were stuck with huge stock. And this is only applicable in 10 cities, not the whole of the country. So kind of look at the kind of anomalies which exist, in this. Then, of course, the liquor ban, as I already spoke about. Can the decision result in desired impact? The court did not even consider that there are other intoxicants truck drivers consume. If any of you know what truck drivers do, ganja hai, afeem hai, smack hai, and all these things. Not necessarily liquor. Secondly, by banning the sale of liquor close to the highway, can you stop the sale of liquor elsewhere? You can't. If the driver has already bought the liquor while going on the trip from wherever at a convenient time, how can you stop that? You cannot say that you cannot carry liquor with you in your cabin. The court didn't say that. Either it could have gone into that, more details which they could not even think about. Now, both 2G and coal block, as I said, alternate remedies were available. The court did not examine them at all. How much more time? 5 minutes. Okay. Proportionality. Now, I'm just giving the framework, and then I'll come to the conclusion after this. If the decision has unintended consequences, particularly in stakeholders not parties to the matter, like in the liquor case, lack of proportionality totally. Third is, are sanctions proportionate to the cause of the fault? Like the coal case, you just cancel all the coal mines and you create a problem. All the thermal power stations are short of coal. They have to import coal from Australia or wherever, and suddenly the prices of coal power production goes up. Then, finally, the important thing was, if many of these things happen because of corruption, have you been able to punish the guilty parties? In the coal case, unfortunately, a good friend of mine got penalized unnecessarily, Harish Gupta, a dead honest person. and just because he could not defend himself, and because of some notings in the file, etc., which was he had done it innocently, for example. But this is just a little aside. He's finally still fighting the matter. Next, please. Now, there are systemic solutions for judicial response on economic matters, which could be done. One is to conduct impact assessment ex ante prior to taking a decision. What would it cost? The Supreme Court does that in many cases, not necessarily economic cases. In many cases, they appoint a committee to look into the impact of this matter. So it could have been done rather than to rush into. Uh, then another very important thing is they don't think about alternate remedies. One matter that we deal with, which is not listed here, but is coming out in my second volume of this book, is the sterilized copper case in Thoothukudi in Tamil Nadu. There are a large number of people who have been robbed of their livelihood. So where is the issue? They say that the environmental pollution, we don't know whether the environmental pollution was there or not. The State Pollution Control Board did a blunder. The National Green Tribunal in that particular case held that there was no environmental pollution, so there was no need to shut down the plant. Anyway, besides the point, what I'm saying is that many of these cases require a little more analysis and a very clear thinking that this has to be resolved. Because of the sterilized copper plant being shut down, from being a net exporter of copper, we become a net importer. That then impacts a trade deficit, etc., etc. I'll not get into those details. Now, judicial performance. How do you enhance research and accountability standards? Let me just list these two bullets for. I think all of you understand what I'm trying to say without getting much into detail. The chair has asked me to conclude as soon as possible. Next, please. The next steps is, of course, awareness generation. The way what is happening, people should be aware as to what are the pitfalls of wrong judgments or incorrect judgments or improper judgments. When there are methods now, many other you can get lessons from other countries also who do it very systematically and scientifically. Then capacity building of stakeholders and judicial officers to conduct economic impact analysis decisions. I hope that the Bhopal situated National Judicial Academy can take note of this and use it to train some of the judges to understand as to how to do it. And finally, how do we develop papers which can deal with this in a very layperson's language as to what could be the impact, etc., etc. All our books contain very short, succinct summary papers also for any layperson to read rather than to go through the whole text. So the book addresses both the layperson as well as the more serious person. Now, let me conclude here. I mean, there are some other examples which I can talk about. The recent developments highlighting complex interaction between law and economics, adverse impacts of climate change, judicial oversight in cases probed by central and state agencies. This was very funny. The Supreme Court reversed its own order in the DMRC case when rupees 8,000 crores was awarded to Reliance Infra. Calcutta High Court cancelled 25,753 appointments. Now, Supreme Court is considering a private party can be considered as a community resource. Then on demonetization and electoral bonds, these are two very, very weak orders. Much could have been done. But I suppose there was political economy issues involved in this. Now, one thing which came up, and I gave you the example where Supreme Court has even applied its pen. I'm not saying that Supreme Court is wrong all the time. It can be very, very correct and on many occasions. Like in the Great Indian Bustard matter. Great Indian Bustard it's a bird in Rajasthan desert, Rajasthan and Pakistan desert, which is now becoming extinct. Particularly, what is happening in Barmer district is new solar energy plants are coming up. And to evacuate electricity, wires are going across, high tension wires. The Supreme Court has ruled in that particular case, and then, yeah, and said that, look, you cannot, you have to take these wires underground. There are other methods that they're trying to do. The fact is that there is a very good order in this particular thing. With that, let me thank you once again. And since I've taken too much time, indeed, I'm aware. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mehta ji. And I would also like to apologize on behalf of the member of Culture and Art, the society. Sometimes I can't help it if someone is asking me to interject. But thank you so much for your patience. And I would like the gentleman to please continue the conversation.
Yeah. In fact, now, without wasting even a second, Satya, would you like to? Yes, right. Go ahead because we have a lot of ground to cover and very, very few minutes left.
Uh, I don't have a PowerPoint, and I hope my points are not going to be powerless points. Now, with regard to this book, Unpolitically Correct, the politics and the economics of governance, I have been asked in many cities where the book launches are there that this is a very provocative title and why it didn't become politically incorrect. People who go through this book will find out that there is nothing vituperative or vitriolic about it. With the help of hard data, what is been proved is not coming from predetermined position, but what that data is speaking. I have covered that may completely uh, debunk the belief that our policies are progressive and benign. May that may it depends on whether you accept the data, whether you are a believer in data or not, or it is something which is um, a creation of the political economy where the self-interest plays a role, uh, in which more powerful knock off the benefits, or whether our policies are meant to create a designated class of winners and losers. So this is the broad theme. It is not that it also a long time back Buchanan and other public choice theorists had come out with something like that, but they are basically outsiders to the story. Okay, so they were built of a theoretical framework. But the point is here I'm looking at policies of education, policies of agriculture, health policies, your macroeconomic policies, including employment and including data collection itself. Okay, and the state finances, GST, etc., etc., and looked at this thing whether what our belief has been, is it correct or incorrect, or you will have to question. I think the intention of the book is that readers should question the very basis of the policies and not accept it on the face value. And like everyone else, I had a temptation not to write, not to give the data sources, write end notes, footnotes, etc. Of course, there are no footnotes here. Write end notes and because it is so convincing, etc. Then it occurred to me that anything which can be asserted without evidence can be debunked without evidence the next minute. So that's why I wrote this book. Um, Going back to the point, what do I expect the readers to take away from? I want the readers to read, debate, deliberate, discuss, and to figure out what exactly we are moving. Is there a smoke and mirror story there? Or is it something which prima facie what is told to us we should believe? So these are the takeaways of that book. Now the second thing is why unpolitically correct? Political, politically correct, the term exists. It is something like It is correct, but with caveat emptor. It is something that the lowest common denominator of correct, being correct. And you are trying not to offend anyone, not to you behave and use language in manner that no one will be offended. That is politically correct. Politically incorrect is the entire inverse of that. That means you don't care whether someone is offended. But as I told you, there is nothing vituperative about it. There is nothing arising out of predetermined position. And as one economist in Bombay told, in this book, you cannot box the author as a Keynesian or a non-Keynesian, or he is a classicist, or a neoclassicist, etc. So I'm not a prisoner of dogma here. I have looked at the evidence and given it, and I look forward to the readers reading it and to engage with what the government is doing, so that they can be not only they can ask questions to the power. Thank you.
We have very few minutes, but let's go back to when my friend Pradeep mentioned about contempt of court. There is this joke which came out of England. There were two judges who passed an order, and next morning, one of the newspapers wrote, "The old fools have done it again. The old fools have done it again." So one of the media men asked one of the two judges that you haven't pulled up this guy for the contempt of court. He said, "Where is the contempt here? That we are old is a matter of fact. All judges are generally old. And that we are fools is a matter of opinion. Where is the contempt here?" So we have to probably take all the judgments in right spirit and yet and allow accommodation as it comes. Because we have very limited time. I have two quick questions, one for each of you, and then if time and organizers permitting, maybe the audience will also come up with questions. So the question to you, Pradeep, and in very brief, is because you went through a very detailed analysis, is that when natural resources are allocated, the Supreme Court in its both these major orders on coal scam as well as on 2G hasn't come down very clearly about the method to be followed. So, wouldn't you think that policymakers would be in a great element of confusion? And here's your case here, and you sympathize with the fact that a lot of revenue loss took place whenever things were in operation, and then the court said no, there is some illegality or whatever involved here. So how do you really allocate resources? And natural resources can be of two kinds. One is the physical kind, which is coal. Some of it can be abstract, like airwaves, as in the case of 2G or any other, and the famous Cricket Association of Bengal case, etc., etc. Now, how does one countenance this? So, a very brief point on this, and so that I don't hold the mic again to you. Yesterday only, I think the ASER's report came in about 67% downward reduction in enrollment in primary schools in rural areas of the country. Now, is the government vacating the public space for health and education? And you, in your book, point out that there are very big risks involved here. Do you think there is a way to come back, or have we now gone ahead without putting in place proper, strong regulatory methods and standards? So, kindly, you can come on that. But to start with, in very brief, Pradeep, you first.
No, I see the issue about allocation of natural resources was actually a cause of downfall for UPA too. And this is something with Dr. Manmohan Singh suffered quite a lot of ignominy. He did set up a committee under Ashok Chawla, which report never came out, never published, because it was embarrassing many people, and particularly it was embarrassing the petroleum lobby. And we know who we are talking about. So I'll not get names here. Now, in terms of, there is a debate going on globally, and many countries in Latin America have also used non-auction theory to allocate resources. But if it is done transparently and in a what's the word, in a cohesive manner, then I'm sure even that can be done. I'll tell you why. Because the downside of auction theory has also been felt many times that auctions can lead to high prices. Just now, the Rajasthan government has adopted a policy of allocating land to prospective investors on a first come, first served basis. No auctions. Because the moment you get into auction, the problem is that you may not be able to regulate the price. You can't, I don't know whether you can actually have a price cap in auctions, whether it would work or not. So there has to be a mix of both. But the problem again is, Parshu, that our governance system has become so corrupt now. Who are you going to trust? Even bureaucracy is now, totally corrupt. Maybe your time it wasn't so. But so where do you do? And then politicians, bureaucrats, etc. The same thing. Then of course you're dealing with politics also. So the opposition party criticized the government of Rajasthan decision to allocate land without auctions. But anyway, as I said, one has to look at it on a case-to-case basis. Thank you.
Uh, on this issue, if two people differently enabled compete for the same resources, the result is well known. You don't require any knowledge of rocket science. The more powerful, you knock it out. One of the things here, I'm talking about corporate bond market. Because corporate bond market, I am insisting on that largely because the same resources of the banking resources, which normally in many countries doesn't go to the industries or particularly big industries, it go to SMEs and goes as working capital for the big industries. It goes to the big ticket loaning item and it is not available for agriculture. It's not available for SMEs. It is not available for people are happy with lazy banking in one hand. The businessmen are happy taking that big loan at one stop shop and then you can default and get away with it. So naturally, that is the broader picture. Coming back, it is the if there is a 67% reduction in the enrollment, then the second thing is that if people are preferring going out of the government schools and joining the private schools, giving some fees, etc., a there is a perception that it is not value for money. And instead of addressing that particular cause, what we do is that we address the symptom. Okay. The cause is that, like, maybe it is underfunded institution, maybe it is undermanned institution. Okay. Maybe there is absenteeism. Absenteeism is very much there because Abhijit Banerjee says that any given time, given point of time, you'll find 50% of teachers are not before the class. Okay. So that being the case, so that is the problem of the system. Instead, you say these guys are not doing anything. Okay, this will not deliver anything. Will allow people to private schools to come up, people to go there, etc. Knowing fully well that 50% of the people of this country hold only 5.9% of the wealth, and they have about 13 to 14% of the income. They cannot write up a check at the end of the month or the beginning of the month for the fees. Okay. They'll have to send you to some so-called English medium school of very dubious quality. So by taking these kind of stands and by taking stand that the hospitals that should be PPPs, that should be people should go private investment should coexist in the government institution, etc., etc. You are creating a recipe for a disaster. Okay. Not only you are retrenching yourself from the field which would have benefited the substantial quantity on the 70-80% of people. Okay. And you can't make a policy for 2 or 5 or 10% of people ignoring 70, 80, 90%. It's not policy making. You are doing a transactional analysis. Okay. You are doing trying to do a very fine, efficient exchange. Okay. Efficient exchange. It is not policy making. Policy is an amalgam of politics for sure, because many languages, policy and politics, they were the same word. politics for sure. Second thing is that your concept of welfare of the larger number. And the third thing is the evidence. So, what is the evidence you are looking at? We are not looking at evidence. You are not taking the feedback loop. You are not taking doing course corrections. Then what are you doing? You are basically vacating space. So, some will be winners, most will be losers. I think I have answered your question to a certain extent.
Thank you. Given the time, but do we have any time left for at least one audience question? I mean, you can be very. There are a lot of eminent people
Okay,
sitting
we
here. I'm
can
sure
have
they have an observation.
just one question.
Yes, please. Anyone?
Any single question? Sam, front row, please. Yes.
Well, my question to Mohanty sir is that will cover to MSP or how? So, because my personal the farmers are already striking and it's a national issue.
Okay. If you ask me, I looked at the sector very closely. The sector has got two problems. One thing is high, you don't like 75% of the small farmers and 86% of the marginal farmers take loan from the money lender because the banking sector doesn't give them the loan. So availability of capital is a huge problem. Okay. The second thing is that the marketing channel should be, whenever it is delayered, then the farmer gains the maximum. Whenever it's delayered, then there is a major problem of if you are going to agricultural marketing, this thing tie up, you don't have any choice. But the question is, whenever it is delayered, you get maximum benefit, maximum value realization out of the customer spend. It happens. Advantage of MSP is the channel is a delayered channel, but it doesn't mean it has got a lot of problems. MSP forget about everything, whether 100% coverage of MSP, but even at the existing level, we are having mountain of food grain, where our requirement of buffer stock is exactly half of it. Okay. And there is this thing. I do not want to get into economics to say that what are the problems which are creating. So my personal this thing is that MSP for all crop looks like uh, people hallucinating. It is not a vision. It is hallucination. It is just not possible. MSP continuing in the present stage, you can bumble along. You can for some more time, but you will have to get a corrective hour on the table. Uh, what can be done? If you ask me, figure out how do you make capital available to the farmers? How do you enable farmers to access channels of sale and marketing in which substantial portion fruits and vegetable growers lose about 75% to 80% through the middleman. Can you do something about it? To me, these are much bigger issues than MSP, in which only something like 3% and 8% of Punjab and the UP farmers gain the maximum out of the MSP.
Thank you.
Okay. Next question, please. Please keep it short.
Good afternoon, all dignitaries. My question to Mohanty sir कि आई एम वर्किंग इन एजुकेशन डिपार्टमेंट बट सर जो आपने फोकस किया कि जब डिफरेंट डेमोग्राफीज हम देखते हैं इनिशियली पॉलिसी मेकिंग के टाइम पे तो वी गेट स्टक ऑन दिस कि इनिशियल हमारे फीडबैक या बहुत सारे गैप्स हो जाते हैं क्या सजेशन आप देना चाहोगे कि जब भी हम कोई प्रोजेक्ट या प्लानिंग कर रहे हो इनिशियली तो हम लार्ज ऑडियंस को कवर कर पाए इन अ बेनिफिशियरीज जो हम उनको एक पॉजिटिव इम्पैक्ट दे पाए सर थैंक यू
Any policy making, and after all, we are not completely perfect human beings. We can take some precautions, etc. We should give credence to feedback loop and evidence. So it is much better idea to start off with a sample, okay, a pilot, and then grow big out of that, because then you can factor in the feedback loop and the evidence which is coming in. But if you want to go full blast, you will discover there are problems, and there will be players in this whole system. They have got a incentive to hide all these things. Okay. So my advice for this kind of thing is, before you go full blast, try out pilots and then go full blast. That is. And the second thing is, if you look at it, there are some problems which are well known, but why they have not been corrected? A, maybe we condone every kind of mistake. B, we don't care. C, we think that it's someone else's job to correct it. No, the man on the job, it is his job to correct it. Okay, it is his job to correct it. He may not have created the problem, but at least it is his obligation to fix the problem. Okay, so that is what I will say.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Please, a round of applause. I would quickly like to invite Niharika Singh ji and Abhilash Khandikar ji, member of Society for Culture and Environment, to please come forward and present the memento of BLF 2025 as a token of appreciation and love to our authors and our guests. His artwork, as you know, has been created by Padma Shri Bhuri Bhai ji, who is a renowned Bhil artist, and this painting depicts the connection between nature, earth, the human being, and the environment. A round of applause, everybody, please. Thank you so much to Satya ji, Pradeep ji, and R. Parasuram ji for that wonderful and insightful conversation. Thank you so much for your thoughts, for your remarks. Before we move on to the next session, I have a quiz question for all of you. Anybody who knows the answer can raise your hand. मुझे सबसे पहले जिसका हाथ दिखा ऊपर, हम उनकी तरफ mic ले जाएंगे. Please keep the mic ready. The question is about literature. What is William Shakespeare's longest play? Longest play. The name of यहाँ पे सबसे आगे हाथ खड़ा हुआ है. Wrong.
Anyone else who wants to try?
Wrong. Hamlet is the correct answer. Please. I will request Abhilash ji to please present. What's your good name? Utkarsh. The book prize for the right answer, The Enriched Life. The book by Dan Cargill. Along with the guest and authors, please. Yes, Utkarsh. Utkarsh being very shy, but was confident while giving the answer. Hamlet was the correct answer. Any guesses? How many lines does the play have? Any rough guess? Any rough guess? How many lines does the play, the longest play of William Shakespeare, Hamlet, has? 4,000. Yes, 4,000. काश मैं उतना पढ़ पाता. Great. Okay, moving forward, it's time we move on to one of the most awaited sessions, which is on the theory of time. The session is titled as Time Dating of Ancient India, the Science of Kal Kalp Yuga. And we're going to have Mr. Veer Arun in conversation with Rishi Shukla. मैं चाहूंगा से उनका हम मंच पे स्वागत करें. और आपको बताना चाहूंगा सतयुग, त्रेता युग, द्वापर युग और कलयुग, इन 4 युगों को मिलाकर बनता है महायुग. This session offers a fascinating exploration of India's advanced temporal frameworks, providing valuable perspectives for history enthusiasts, scholars, and those who are intrigued by timeless wisdom of ancient India. Please welcome on stage Veer Arya ji and Rishi Shukla ji. Round of applause, everybody. Don't let your energy go down. Veer Arya ji is a senior officer in the Ministry of Defense. He is recognized for his expertise in chronology, history, astronomy, and Sanskrit studies. He has reconstructed the Vedic Yuga calendar, which spans from the Rig Vedic era to the Mahabharat era, to establish the astronomical chronology of Indian civilization. His passion for epigraphic research has made him a meticulous researcher with profound insights into the chronological history of ancient India. He is also the author of several books, including The Chronology of India from Manu to Mahabharata, The Chronology of India from Mahabharat to Medieval Era in 2 volumes, and his upcoming book, scheduled to release in mid 2025, is titled Chronology and Origins of the Indo European Civilizations. Can we please welcome him with a round of applause, everybody? As a discussion, we are delighted to have Mr. Rishi Shuklaji with us. He has 38 years of rich experience in the law enforcement field, serving with the government of India. He is the former director CBI. He was also the former DGP Madhya Pradesh. He has keen interest in good governance, criminal justice reforms, police